Welcome to a new episode of Melt. I'm Ritvika Gupta. At Kyoorius and in this show, we've been practicing diversity and inclusion without being aware of it. It is demonstrated in the number of women achievers who appear on the show, who speak at ZEE Melt and at Kyoorius Designyatra, and who are jurors at the Kyoorius Creative Awards. As the conversation around gender diversity gains momentum across the world, we thought we should have a structured and measurable program of inclusion. As a result, you can look forward to seeing at least 50% of our guests on this show being women, a panel discussion featuring women every quarter, and a continued focus on women in our speakers and our juries. It's not going to be limited to lip service on Women's Day. We've engaged with the collective to attempt to understand the issues that need to be discussed and highlighted. There are many, and as you watch this show, you will learn more about each. We are starting our journey in focusing on women this week with an interview with Sneha Iype Varma, Executive Director and Producer, Nirvana Films. Let's get ready to melt with Sneha Iype Varma.
Morning, Sneha.
Hi, Anand. Good morning.
So, Sneha, it's a very simple question. Do you think you would have found it easier to achieve all that you've achieved if you were a man and not a woman?
Okay. I don't think I've ever thought of it in that sort of perspective or light. I don't think that has affected me in any way. Being a woman and the choices I've made or where I've got to has nothing to do with being a man or woman. These were choices I personally made. And here I am. So, I mean, it's really not fair for me to now, go back and say if I were a man, it could have been any different. Because I don't think anyone held a gun to my head and said you can do something or you can't do something. And I speak from a place of privilege, and I understand that because a lot of people probably don't have the opportunities that I had at the time when I started. So for me, it was really about what do I feel passionately about? What do I love to do? What were my circumstances then? And with every decade, actually, there's been a realization about the choices I made. There's been some amount of reflection on why I chose to do something, why I didn't, and it's never just in isolation. I think you have to look at things in context, and you have to look at things from a perspective of understanding why you make a certain choice at a particular point in your life. And I think I've very spontaneously taken those decisions, and I've stuck by them. And I have no regrets, absolutely none, because I did what I could. And I'm happier for those decisions. And so, yeah, joy prevails.
Yeah. So you spoke about the privileges you have, which other women might not have. Can you expand on those privileges? What do you think you were privileged with, which perhaps not available to everybody?
Right. So firstly, I think mostly women in advertising come from a background where they, go to good schools, they speak good English, they have an advantage over probably several other women in India who don't have those entry points, like a good education, going to a good school, or having conversations at home about things, related to choices about, even when it comes to gender. I grew up at a home in Kerala where my parents always encouraged dialogue, discussion, arguments, and I was always given, I was never made to feel that I could not make the choices that my brother had. There was never any distinction. So for me, that, I took that for granted at a certain time, but I think there was a time in my life when I realized that was a privilege by itself, because a lot of women didn't have those discussions, or they weren't told a certain thing, or they didn't have the freedom to talk about it, or, so those things, of course, are privileges. And then I think the profession itself, if you look around within advertising, I mean, you have women who are bold, smart, fearless, opinionated, and all of that. And I think a lot of other professions probably don't have that. And why is that? I mean, that's something we need to understand. So I think our starting points are different. That's what I mean by the privilege. It's not only economical or anything. It's to do with space around you, strong mothers, strong fathers, good institutions, encouraging dialogue. So all of that, I think, yeah.
Right. So now, just before we started this interview, you spoke about 3 children and a dog, and of course, husband and house and so on. So now these are almost always challenges for women in any kind of work, not just in advertising. You have a child, and then that almost signals the beginning of the end of your career. So talk to me about balancing the three children and the dog.
Well, never easy. Let me tell you, there was a time in my life when I battled all of that. It was very difficult to think that now my career would be on a pause. I would have to put my feet up and, go through my pregnancy with twins. These are not easy things because, the career front was far more exciting. I had travel. I had, we were shooting all over the place. Our career was on an upward graph. So to give all that up at that time, almost 15 years ago, 16 years ago, was not easy at all. And I had difficulty accepting it. But again, those were choices I made, and those were collective choices. I think for women also, we have a biological clock ticking. And I knew I did want to have a family and I wanted to be a mother. So I couldn't postpone that decision any longer. So, the day I came to terms with the fact that this is a choice I've made and I want to be comfortable with it and I want to do my best here as well, that's when I think a lot of the dust settled for me. And again, it's got nothing to do with who said what, or, no one expected anything from me. It was entirely my call. The day I accepted that this pregnancy is important, my children are important, I cannot give it, a stepmotherly treatment. That's when I sort of started to enjoy what I was doing. And these are phases. So you go through that. I had the privilege of coming back into work and I found my balance. And I think, honestly, women are multitaskers. I mean, there's no question about it. I could be looking at my phone. I could listen to you. I can be thinking of my, mother-in-law's dental appointment, my child's PTA. There's a million things about the grocery list and yet be involved or engrossed in the message. That I could do a million things at the same time. And that's the strength or the innate strength that women have. And I find men really don't. They're only able to sort of wear blinkers and focus on one thing. So I think that works to our advantage. And that said, it's not therefore compulsory that all women have to have that ability. But it's there. I think it kicks in at some point and you learn to manage all of it and you learn to find your balance and your peace. And that's exactly what I've done. I don't want to be a superwoman. I don't want to be the best mother there is or the best wife there is or the best producer there is. Definitely not. This is not a competition or a race of any kind. I'm happy doing what I can manage. And we'll see where this goes. I mean, who's to know and what's the test? And no one's ranking me for this. So, hey.
Okay. Now, I'll talk to Varma later about this interview. But on a serious note, we are talking to a few producers, directors, women producers, directors about the challenges they face. And one of the things that comes out is while the representation of women directors and producers is very high, in the production houses, the representation is not as high. Would you care to talk about that? I mean, your own organization, what is it in Nirvana? Do you have a 50-50, 30-70, 40-60? What is it?
Yeah. So, well, the data, of course, is appalling all across the board. It's got nothing to do with the production versus advertising versus women in IT, women in, all kinds of things. So I think apart from teaching and maybe some other professions, you will always find that skew. There'll be definitely more men at the top. And it's going to take us a while before we sort of become at par on a lot of fronts. That said, I think in production, if you look around, there are now quite a number of women in different aspects of filmmaking. Why are there more producers than directors who are women? Is a question we must ask ourselves as women. Why are we making those choices? Are we better at organizing stuff? Are our organizational skills better? Are we, good at something and not good at something? Well, there's no explanation for that because actually we are empathetic, far more sort of, I think, than most men are. So we should be able to direct just as well or better. So why are women not making those choices? I don't know. I could have directed myself. That's how I started my career. Why did I not stick with it? I mean, that's something I've reflected on. And does that make me any less? No, because I've managed to do something else and I do it well. So I think women eventually need to only answer themselves, do we create room for them to come up and do what they want to do and pursue what they're good at? Yes, we must definitely do that. Whether you're a man or a woman who is in an organization, if you can create room for more people to come in, more talented people to come in, irrespective of gender, that's something we must encourage. And we must definitely not allow women to give up something because they feel pressured by their surroundings or whatever it is. I mean, I think that conversation is important. See, I think what's really happened is we now have given girls the vocabulary and we've given men the vocabulary to be able to speak up, right? To be able to say, this is not comfortable. I don't want this because this is what it is. What you're doing to me right now is this, or whatever that is. That the terminology to be able to speak up is something that we are, I think, finally giving our girls and our boys as well. So I hope that with and these things take time. So in the future, I do see a lot more participation. I mean, if you look at film per se, why don't we have enough women cinematographers? So there is a gender skew in many areas. You have a lot of women who are great production designers, who are great food stylists, who are great hairstylists, who are great makeup artists, who are great fashion designers. So why not cinematography? Why not lighting? Why not grips? So these are questions we need to ask, but I don't think it boils down to whether there are opportunities or not. I think it's about women who need to push themselves to take those opportunities up and say, this has got nothing to do with gender. I feel passionately about this, and whatever it takes, I'm going to go after it. And I'm sure there'll be room for people who really want to do it.
Right. Yeah. So do you think the corporate part of the business, the large agencies, the marketers, do you think they feel a gender bias against women? Are they uncomfortable with women calling the shots? Are they uncomfortable with women achievers and super achievers? Are they uncomfortable as a whole?
I have a problem with generalizations.
Right.
I've never faced that. I think the men in my profession have treated me very well, and I would have no other way. So that's one part of it. And I think it's really how you sort of take the reins in your hands. So I don't think that all men feel that way. But we must understand in context that they have had the privilege to call the shots. They have this, men have by default in all these decades sort of had that, that privilege, right? So they may knowingly or unknowingly use that in a way that may offend or be biased towards other men, or in passing make strange comments about women, and she's an aggressive so and so, or she's whatever. Men may do that, may have done it. Is that acceptable? No, not anymore. And you've got to wake up to that. There's no question about it. I don't think men can get away with that kind of, you may think it, but you definitely can't say it anymore. That said, I started my work at a time when, office romances were okay to have. And there was a camaraderie and a bonding that, people from the same gender shared. And I feel in a way that that's gone. And it's sad because I don't know. I mean, so I think somewhere there has to be a balance. You can't diss men for everything, and you can't say that women are always right. You make certain choices as adults, and you've got to stick by it. And you can't. It's not everything. Doesn't boil down to a gender comparison or a blame game.
Okay, so the last question, and you wrap this conversation up. So there's a 23-year-old girl who wants to join advertising, any part of advertising. It doesn't matter. And what do you tell her? You say it's a great idea. Do you say think about it? Do you say it's not a good idea? What do you do? What's your answer to her?
Of course, it's a great idea. I love the profession I'm in, and I can't say advertising, mainstream, client, whatever is something that I haven't done. But production, of course, film, of course. There's no question about it. It's a place where, irrespective of color, race, gender, religion, I think film is the most welcoming place for anybody. And if you are a person who feels passionately about something, there is room for you. And fight through, make sure you're heard. Don't sit back and assume that it's going to come to you on a platter. You've got to work just as hard as anybody else, irrespective of whatever gender you are. And make the most of it. I don't think there's any other profession that is so, what is the word for it? So exciting. Yeah.
Right. So what I'm going to do is at the end of this segment, I'm going to ask young women who struggle in the workplace with any of these problems that we've discussed today to mail you, and I will request you to help them deal with those challenges. Is that okay with you?
Of course, the struggle is also always internal. So sometimes you've got to just sit and talk about it.
Sure.
And you realize that we could overcome those struggles quite easily. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Sneha.
Thanks, Anand.
Talk to you soon again, hopefully
Pleasure.
in Bangalore, and hopefully
Yes,
face to face. Yes.
100%.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was Sneha Iype Varma sharing her journey as a woman in advertising and film production. If you'd like to contact Sneha, you can email her at sneha.iype@nirvanafilms.com. Next week, we'll be speaking to Sohini Das Gupta, co-founder Big Mama Productions, and Suparna Chatterjee, producer at Electric Dreams Film Company. On Creative Picks this week, we'll take a look at some of our favorite Women's Day advertising from India this year, beginning with an interesting ad by Mahindra Tractors. This ad shows a woman appearing for a tractor license and tactfully passing the test. With a seemingly symbolic touch, the main character in the ad is named Shakti, which means power. The ad, while advertising for Mahindra's range of tractors, breaks stereotypes and also champions the cause of farmers. This one's empowering and stands out for its unique idea.
शुरू कर। और कितनी देर भैया?
आप 5 मिनट।
5 मिनट। अगले 5 मिनट में कोई आया नहीं तो लाइसेंस नहीं मिलेगा, बाद में बनवा लेना। अरे अरे अरे, साइकिल चला रहा था क्या? ट्रैक्टर चलाना मजाक नहीं होता है, जिम्मेदारी का काम होता है ट्रैक्टर चलाना, समझे?
हाँ सर, लेकिन मेरे
चलो चलो नेक्स्ट।
साहब, शक्ति।
तुम शक्ति?
हाँ शक्ति
ट्रैक्टर का ड्राइविंग टेस्ट देना है?
जी।
देखो यहाँ पे मुझे बहुत साल हो गए, लेकिन आज तक किसी लड़की को मैंने ट्रैक्टर का ड्राइविंग टेस्ट देते हुए नहीं देखा है। क्यों? हाँ,
आज से देखेंगे सर। चले?
सुनो, ये आसान नहीं होगा।
सर, आसान होता तो हर कोई किसान होता, है ना?
क्योंकि हमारा ट्रैक्टर हाथों का जज्बा परखता है, उसकी बनावट नहीं। महिंद्रा करता है इस जज्बे को सलाम।
Moving on, the next ad is by Prega News. The brand has launched a Women's Day campaign that highlights the sensitive issue of infertility. The ad urges viewers to extend the care for those suffering from infertility and celebrate every woman for who she is. I think it's very brave for the brand to raise a conversation around this stigma, and it's commendable, especially coming from a pregnancy test kit brand that says Prega News means good news. The ad is thoughtful, inclusive, and touching.
थैंक यू। ये लो।
भाभी, पता है आपने जो क्वेश्चन बताया था ना, वही मेरे एग्जाम।
रेनू बेटा, देख तूने क्या लाया तेरे लिए? पालना। कैसा रहेगा बच्चे के लिए?
इसकी अभी से क्या जरूरत थी?
छोटी बहू, एक तो तुमने आते ही इतनी बड़ी खुशखबरी दे दी, ऊपर से घर की पहली गोद भराई। इनसे सब्र कहाँ होगा?
भाभी, पापा जी की चाय का पानी रख दिया है।
बड़ी बहू अभी तो आई हो, आराम कर लो, चाय छुटकी बना देगी।
पापा जी की स्पेशल चाय मेरे हाथ से ही बनेगी।
तू मुस्कुराए औरों की खुशी में मगर क्यों महसूस करे एक कमी भी है। क्यों आंखों में नमी तेरे और होठों पे चीख तभी सी है। हरे मका को घर बनाया तूने, क्यों तू समझे खुद को अधूरी। और भी कई किरदार हैं तेरे जो बनाए तेरी पहचान पूरी।
ये गिफ्ट देखो, लगता है मौसी ने तो सोच लिया कि बेटी होगी। बेटी ही होगी ज्योति, तू देखना।
अगर बेटी हुई तो नाम क्या रखेंगे?
वो पता नहीं, पर अगर लड़का हुआ तो ध्रुव।
बड़ी बहू तुम बताओ, अगर बेटी होगी तो क्या नाम रखेंगे?
मैं खीर लेके आई।
लतिका। लतिका होगा हमारी बेटी का नाम, जो लता भाभी की परछाई होगी, जो पापा की शुगर कंट्रोलर होगी, जिसके हाथ में मम्मी जी की बीमारी को ठीक करने का जादू होगा, जो ज्योति की ट्यूशन टीचर होगी और बुरे वक्त में इस घर की हिम्मत बनेगी, और मुझ जैसी नई बहू के लिए ताकत होगी। जहां भी रहेगी ना भाभी, सिर्फ खुशियां फैलाएगी।
Next, we have an ad by Bumble. The brand released a film that celebrates the many moves women make in their daily lives. It features women from all walks of life and talks about the seemingly unnoticed to imperfect, sometimes outrageous, and most of all courageous moves that we make every day. The ad encourages women to take charge in all aspects of their lives. It's fun, high on energy, and will resonate with a lot of women.
It's that time of the year, huh?
Our day, the one day to celebrate us. Celebrate moves of those who make it to the papers. But what about the rest of us? And our big little moves that make all of us. Those changing their world, one step at a time, one first text at a time. Some with their first checks, some walking out on the toxic ex. All are confident.
No. Nice.
Don't forget the hell yeah, he said yes. Or yikes, I said yes. Our fights, our falls, paint on half the wall. When we show up or we grow up. When we come out or crawl. Well, we are the sum of our moves. And all the seemingly frivolous moves we make, we are keeping count. Here's to all our moves.
And finally, here's a note from the founders of the collective. The industry body rolled out a video which states that there's too much tokenism around International Women's Day without any real insights or solutions to existing conditions. The women in this video speak up and share what bothers them. Take a look.
She's forced to be a saint and not allowed to be human.
Because what's a woman leader without the caregiver archetype in her, right? And God forbid, if you don't have that, you are called an aggressive bitch.
We've learned to censor ourselves. It's a sad truth, but it happens so often.
Men are hiring other men.
Women
don't get paid as much as men.
About sanitary napkins or detergents or microwaves.
Being difficult.
She's so cranky.
Do you have your period?
At this young age.
The work and the perception.
Woman filmmaker.
Women complain too much.
Expert panels that feature only men.
Is she pretty? Is she hot?
Not speaking up.
No way you could come back to work.
You feel left out.
Woman is making money.
The lips speak.
Be more likable.
They're afraid to speak up.
I used to be so bothered.
What bothers us?
Try harder.
Know your rights.
You don't need the job.
Quality or diversity, inclusion.
We're talking about a systemic problem here.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Melt. Do follow us on social media. Our handle is Ready to Melt, and stay updated with all that's happening in the world of advertising and marketing with our daily Melt updates on our website, readytomelt.com. I shall see you next week, same time, same place. Goodbye.